Okay, to start, I'm going to peel a green bell pepper. So we'll go ahead and throw it on the grill here. And while that's peeling, I'm going to go ahead and make I'm going to make the red pepper pasta here, but I'm going to use the well method, which is how you do it without a pasta maker. Okay, we've taken our flour, we've made a well. We're going to break our egg in the center. We're going to take some paprika. I would say we're going to put for one egg, you want to put about a half tablespoon in. You're going to put a little salt. Just a touch. And this one we are going to hit with just a little bit of olive oil. We're going to start by mixing our ingredients in the well. The egg, the olive oil, the salt, and the paprika. And then we're going to try to bring the flour from the outside under the egg, so that we have as little contact with the egg and the cutting board as possible, or the pastry board. This was my grandmother's pastry board, by the way. Many pierogi got made on this in its lifetime. Now we've got this here where it's kind of coming into a ball. We're going to gather that together, move some of this excess flour out of the way. Now this is the long part of the process, you might say. We got to knead this for a little bit here. Now once again, depending on when you're doing this, you can replace some of the kneading by just wrapping the pasta up and let it sit, because thyme also develops gluten as well as kneading. When we cook, we're working with natural ingredients, and there's no two tomatoes that are the same. There's no two herbs that are the same. You know, you can have a basil leaf from one day to the next. It's going to taste different, and you really just can't say, well, I followed the recipe so I know it's right, because you really don't. And so I'm always on these guys. Have a little thing of spoons next to you, and you know, every time you make a sauce, anytime you make anything, you need to hit it with that spoon, take a little taste. And you know, like I said, we keep a little container of spoons with us, so we can only use it once. But you know, it's very important that people taste stuff. You'll never produce a high quality product if you don't. You can basically tell by the way it holds together. When it starts getting shiny and it starts not cracking when you're pushing it, yeah, it gets kind of a shininess to it. Okay. Well, gluten is it's the protein that's in flour. It's a type of it's one of the types of protein that's in flour. And what it does is, like when you have bread, it's why bread rises instead of just the bubbles just going out of the bread. It gives structure to anything that's made with flour. You know, the same with this pasta. That's why the pasta doesn't just dissolve when you drop it in the water, because the gluten, they start off, from what I understand, when they start off in the flour, they're kind of coiled up. And as you get water to them and as you work them, they kind of uncoil and then start connecting with each other and building like a structure. So that's why, for example, when you use biscuits, which you want to be very crumbly, you want to use very low gluten flour, and you want to make sure you don't work the biscuits to develop what gluten there is in the flour. Otherwise, you have a tough biscuit if you work them too much. So gluten can be your friend or it can be your enemy depending on what you're trying to do. Once again, cake flour is very low gluten flour because you don't want a chewy cake. You want a very tender cake, and you want to make sure you don't work the batter too much, once again, because if you work the batter too much, it'll be chewy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to roll this out. This stuff is... I was jabbering instead of thinking. The stuff's a little dry. After we roll it to a sufficiently large size, what we want to do then is roll it actually around the rolling pin. And that's how we're going to stretch it actually, is by rolling it around the rolling pin. You roll it a couple times. You flop it down. You go to the other end. You roll it that way. As you can see, it is getting longer and thinner with much effort. If I would have made this dough a little wetter, we would see it work a whole lot better. But okay, let's pretend we have a nice thin sheet of pasta here. One of many reasons I prefer cooking to brain surgery, because, you know, even if you make a little mistake, everybody still walks away from it. So now what I'm going to do then is roll my pasta up, and I'll cut it into noodles about 1/4 inch wide. So we'll let those sit for a minute while we prepare the rest of it. Okay, here I have a 8-ounce chicken breast with lightly marinated with some basil, olive oil, salt, pepper, and a little fresh garlic. Okay, we're going to take a little splash of olive oil here again. In this case, this is pumice oil, which is a pretty inexpensive olive oil. Now for what we're doing here, I don't have any problem using it. Usually when I use extra virgin olive oil, it's for stuff where I'm not so much cooking, because the cooking actually destroys a lot of the flavor in extra virgin olive oil. I've heard some very respected Italian chefs say, oh no, you don't use extra virgin olive oil for day-to-day cooking. You use that for finishing things. And that's what I tend to do. I use it for finishing things. I've cut up a couple of mushrooms here. I've thrown them in a skillet. We're going to go ahead and cut up a piece of garlic here. Toss that in the skillet. We've got our chicken cooking here, and we've still got our green pepper there. We're going to go ahead and cook those. I'm going to hit it with a little more olive oil because those mushrooms absorbed all the oil on me, which they have a tendency to do. Just because that seed dried up with the dinosaurs doesn't necessarily mean that it's not sea salt. Now, and once again, sometimes I'll get the sea salt because I need a larger crystal, and that's fine. Then you're getting it for the shape of the crystal, and that's a legitimate difference. But the actual chemical is still the same thing. Same thing is there's some, we're going to put a little heavy cream in there and reduce it. We're not going to reduce it much. If I was using this with dry pasta, I'd reduce it and make a nice thick sauce. But once again, because the fresh pasta is so delicate, we want to be careful that we don't overpower it with the sauce. If you use fresh pasta and you have a heavy sauce, you tend to get something that's like almost an oatmeal effect to me. You know, it's not, the pasta gets lost in the sauce. So we're not going to reduce this much. We're just going to let it simmer for a little bit, get hot, pick up a little of the flavor of the peppers and the mushrooms and the garlic. And then we'll add our pasta to it. If I were doing something a little different with this, if maybe I wanted some kind of Southwest kind of feeling to it, I might use the smoked paprika. Okay, our chicken's got another minute to be done here. But we're going to go ahead and drop our colossal fat pasta in here. Give it a swirl. Yeah, usually there's two different ways I create. One is I'll start with a recipe, and in that case I'll usually make the recipe until I'm 100% comfortable with the way the recipe turns out, and then I'll start saying, well, that's great, but what if I do this, and what if I do that? The other way is I'll just start with some ingredients and sit there and say, how can I combine these? What do I need to add to make this good? You know, but if I'm starting with a recipe, I really do try to avoid substituting until I learn the recipe 100% and understand the way it works. Because if you start changing stuff before you understand the way it works, chances are you're not going to come up with something that you want. So now we'll take our pasta. Drop it in our sauce. Gonna give it a quick toss. Well, I'll tell you how I learned how to do that. I was a dishwasher at the Sheraton, and one Sunday morning, the omelet cook didn't show up, and the chef went to me and said, "Do you know how to flip omelets?" And I said, "I have no idea." He said, "Well, you have 15 minutes to learn." So he said, take this skillet and take a piece of bread and just stand there and play with it until you know how to flip it. And that was kind of history in the making right there, I guess. We're going to go ahead and cut that in stripes, set it on top, and there we go. Thank you.